thank you again for attending. This is a Mabel Tainter sponsored event, Beer Chat 2 as I'm calling it, and I don't know how I'm going to number it from here on out, but Beer Chat 2, and I might switch to Roman numerals later on if we get really sophisticated.
Beer Chat I.
What's that?
Beer Chat I is next.
Oh, got it. So the Mabel Tainter is located in western Wisconsin. We're celebrating 130 years on July 3rd, and we're looking for content, of which, of course, Dieter was so gracious to honor us last week with the topic of alt beer. And we're, with Steve's encouragement, we are doing Beer Chat 2, and it's kind of like an open format today. So unless somebody has a theme they want to start off on, we're just kind of sitting around chatting and having our favorite beverage.
All right.
Yeah, and since this is a small crowd, I think today, Jeff, will not put everyone on mute. We will encourage folks to mute your mic, especially you, Keith, while you're not speaking, to keep that background noise to minimum, unless you got some kind of fun music or dance going on in the background. But obviously, if anyone would like to chime in, please feel free to do so, since you won't be muted. Or, of course, you can send a chat using the chat feature of Zoom, or you can use the raise hand feature to let us know you'd like to join the discussion. Of course, this is a social hour, and as the name implies, we're going to try to keep it to a hard stop within an hour, although last week that didn't happen. We were having too much fun, but we'll let it go until the wind is out of the sails here, or until people get hungry, whichever comes first. But during that time, let's have just
Or need to go to bed.
I say again?
Or need to go to bed.
Or that. I mean, it's early over there in Germany, isn't it?
It is 11 in the evening. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So, I mean, you still have hours to go.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
You can see the Easter Bunny come in.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, maybe I'm the Easter Bunny tonight.
But just so everyone knows, this social distancing togetherness is being recorded so that we can share it online if we so choose. In fact, I saw that Jeff had posted last week's chat, last week's session to the Facebook page. So feel free to go check that out. I think it's it's very highly enjoyable. I enjoyed watching it again. Certainly, depending upon your level of participation in today's event, your voice, picture, and or video may be captured as part of the recording. If you choose to not participate in this recorded session, now's a good time for you to exit the Zoom meeting. For everyone that is participating in the session, I just ask that you keep it respectful and tasteful.
Well, you know how
very
shy I am.
lawyerish there. That is very lawyerish, Steve. That's very good.
Hey, I don't want anybody coming back and saying, you didn't tell me, and you know how it is. You know how people are. Good. So we certainly hope you enjoy today's event. As Dieter mentioned, or as Jeff mentioned, Dieter last week took us through an incredibly fascinating history of alt beer, which started with pre-alt beer, I'll call it, something known as Grut Beer.
Whoa.
That started before was I guess the beer style, the brewing style of the time, and I'm speaking way out of turn here, but prior to when hops became the predominant bittering agent and perhaps preservative in the beer. And so at Dieter's suggestion, which I think was a great one, we're going to step back and start tonight's conversation on the concept of Grut Beer. I see Joe, you've joined us here, Joe Kearns. Welcome and thank you for joining us. And this is one of those. I'll start out this. So, and we talked about this is going to be certainly a much more open and who knows where it goes kind of a session. Although Dieter, I don't know if you have some content prepared to start us out.
Yeah, I had a homework to do, as you might remember, and I take homework for serious.
Okay, good. So, but and we'll let you get going here in a minute. But what I found most interesting and fascinating about this, just to I guess put this all in a little bit of perspective. So we had talked about, what we might do this week, and Dieter suggested via email that we talk about Grut Beer. I thought, neat idea. I better learn what the heck this stuff is. So I Googled Grut Beer, got to a Wikipedia page, and saw in there the mention of a brewery called the White Hag. I think that's the right name. And interestingly, earlier that day, Tom Gilmartin, who's, I don't know where he sits on your screen, but he's joined us here again today. He's an Irish representative of the group, had circled in and talked about this brewery in Ireland, in the town that Tom lives, in Sligo. Ireland, that also happened to make, well, he actually didn't mention Grut Beer. When I was on the Wikipedia page, though, I noticed the White Hag mentioned on there, put 2 and 2 together from at whitehag.com. And so Joe has graciously joined us here. Joe is brewmeister at the White Hag Brewery in Sligo, Ireland, and should be able to offer us some good guidance and information about the art of brewing this stuff and what we should be looking for. So we'll hopefully get there soon. But that, I just thought it was like divine providence that here's this, we decided, Dieter said, hey, let's talk about Grut, and we happen to have somebody connected to us that actually brews this stuff. So I think it should be a fun discussion.
Yeah. So the reason why I mentioned Grut Beer in my email was that I was talking about alt beer, as Steve said, and there was a brewer called Henrik the Brewer who started brewing a beer in 1266, and I said that beer was without hops but with herbs. And there was a question, I think it was Paul who raised the question, which kind of herbs he was using, and I tried to find that out. And before I started Googling, I had no idea what Grut Beer was. I never heard about Grut Beer before. And so I can talk a little bit about the history of Grut Beer, but I have no idea how it's brewed. So somebody else would need to jump in and explain that. I can only talk about history. And I was lucky. I found a Grut Beer from Haarlem in Holland, from the Joppen Brewery, and that will be the first time that I drink a Grut Beer in a minute, and that has 8.5%.
Oh, better drink it fast.
Looking forward to kill the bottle. and after I kill the bottle, I keep my mouth shut because that might have negative impact on my English. I don't know. Let's see.
Fantastic. So this we teed this thing up as the longest virtual bar in the world last week, which if you're interested in why we're calling it that, tune into last week's episode that you can find on the Mabel Tainter page on Facebook. You can imagine the concept is here. We're trying to span as many time zones as we possibly can. We've got 7 here at least represented so far. So let's enjoy the conversation. Let's see where it goes at this point. Unless anybody else wants to jump in here, I would turn it over to Dieter if you've got some content. Get us started. Cue us up.
All right. So what I learned when I did some research on the internet, that beer is something like 4,000 years old, and only the last 500 or 600 or 700 years it's brewed with herbs, and before that, brewed with hops, and before that, in most cases, herbs have been used to brew beer. And I would like to share some slides with you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. Okay. I will again start with a map just to get you into the right context. What is the region we are talking about? So the bubble you can see here with Bolton Beer Garden. So that was the place I was talking about last week, where Henrik the Brewer had his guest house in 1266 and started brewing beer, which later on became alt beer. And in the entire area, which is here highlighted in red, there was a very common beer which was called a Grut Beer already at that time. So what you can see, it's a northwestern European beer style, which is initially, as far as I understood, coming from Scandinavia and very popular in the northern part of Germany, the lower Rhinelands, as well as the Netherlands. And it's brewed, what I read, in Scotland as well. Not sure about England, but what we learned today, because Joe is here, obviously in Ireland as well. And where is the name coming from? It's an old German word. It comes from the word Krut, which is an old word for kraut, and kraut means herbs. And in the Danish language, my wife is from Denmark. She told me that in Danish, herbs, the name for herbs is still Krut. And Krut, yeah. And as you might remember last week when I was talking about Henrik the Brewer, the place, his guest house, was called Krauthof, which is a yard with herbs. And that was the place where he got his herbs from. So for Grut Beer, instead of hops, herbs mixture was used for bittering and getting flavor into the beer. and that was popular until hops came up, and that happened, as I said last week already, in the year 1400 something or 1300 something. Hops became more and more popular, and before that, in most cases, herbs were used, and the sale of these herbs was a monopoly of the local authorities. So I found documents from an old city very close to Düsseldorf on the other side of the river. And
So I think somebody's getting some pickup there. Jeff, can you maybe go ahead and mute some folks there?
All right. Can
Thank
you
you.
still hear me?
Yep.
All right. Okay. So the tradition was that if somebody got the permission to brew a beer, he had to go to a brew master. There's Okay. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
All right. So if somebody wants to brew a beer and got the permission from the local ruler to brew a beer, he had to go to the Grut master, and the Grut master was a member of the local authorities, and he was reporting to the treasurer, and the brewer had to pay a lot of money for these herbs, and that was in fact something like the first beer tax, if you like. So in Germany, Grut beer has been brewed between the year 1000 and the year 1400, but there is evidence that in Scandinavia it has already been brewed like 1000 years before Christ. So it's a very, very old beer tradition, and because it was a kind of a text, we can find old documents which help us to understand how many liters have been brewed, like in the year 1400 or something like that, and how much beer people drank at that time.
Hey, Greg Kittleson.
Pardon?
Sorry, we need Greg to keep his mic there muted for all the background sound that's coming through.
Okay.
Sorry.
And unfortunately, Paul is not in the call today. But the most common herb which have been used to produce these Grut beer is sweet gale. So I translated everything from German with a translator with Dieter, and I hope it's translated correctly. What you can see here are the most common herbs which have been used, and sweet gale is a herb which is very common in the Lower Rhine area. So what we can assume is that Henrik the brewer was using sweet gale to produce his beer. And other herbs which are used is mugwort, yarrow, ground ivy, horehound, or Karuna heater. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I don't know, because I'm hearing these words the first time. But I think Joe will precisely know which herbs I'm talking about. And to get some better flavor into the beer, other ingredients were used as well, such as berries, ginger, seed, aniseed, and cinnamon, mint, and stuff. And the most common grain at that time, which was used for brewing the beer, that was oat. I found two Grut beer here in the area. The one I ordered and got shipped from Haarlem in the Netherlands is the Grut beer. It has 8.5% alcohol, and ingredients are water, barley malt, wheat malt, oats, sweet gale, yeast, eucalyptus, menthol, red fruits, and caramel. And I found another beer which is brewed in a place called the Grut House, which is in a city called Münster in Germany, that has 5% of alcohol, water, barley malt, wheat malt, oats, yeast, sweet gale, hops, juniper, bagel, and caraway, whatever that is. And both beers are brewed with the help of recipes which are coming from the 15th century. So the Dutch beer I'm drinking in a second is from the recipes from 1407, and the other one from Münster, which is called Murica Gale, is from 1418, and I'm going to open my bottle and check out how that tastes. So as I already said last year, I'm drinking beer since 40 years, and this is my first Grut Beer, 8.5%, and I'm using this beautiful glass here. Let's see how that is.
It is a beautiful glass. It's a fitting
It's
glass to pour this thing into, I would say.
perfect glass for that ceremony. Who tried Grut Beer already, besides Joe, of course?
I never have.
Even you not, Dave?
Dave, you're muted.
Oh,
Frankly, everyone's muted right now pretty much to keep the background up.
I have never had Grut.
Hey, Dieter, is that the spill-proof glass?
pardon?
Is that the spill-proof glass?
I don't know what that is, sorry. That is a Mabel Tainter
See,
glass
yeah,
from Menominee. Cheers.
cheers. My Mabel Tainer glass is like a sippy cup, so I don't spill it in the theater.
Ooh.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I ask.
All right. You got to taste it twice.
Yeah, and maybe I need more than one glass. But what I can say is it tastes like beer. It definitely tastes like beer. It's bitter. It's I can taste the taste of wood. Can that be true? I don't know. It's completely different from a double stick or other beers which have 8.5 or 8.7%. But it's good.
So that caraway seed that that you had mentioned that you didn't know what that was, that's the seed that they use in rye bread a lot in the U.S. So
Okay.
the Rogan.
Yeah.
We get it a lot in sauerkraut as well.
Yeah.
Okay. That's really good. Okay, so let's go ahead as long as I can still talk. Where's my presentation? All right.
So, you'll maybe get there, Dieter, but, one of the things that I found is that, in fact, I'm reading in here. So, Grut Ale stimulates the mind, creates euphoria, and enhances sexual drive. So you better get moving quick.
Woo, 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 woo. Okay. All right. So I come back in 5 minutes.
Right. Remember those rules that Steve said at the beginning. Keep this thing tasteful.
Yeah.
Well, those
All
are just
right.
guidelines.
Okay, so what Steve mentioned already is absolutely true. So Grut beer has been brewed and used for very different purposes. So it was it was important for the nutrition of the people. That's what I mentioned last week already. Many people, more or less everybody, was drinking beer because it was not alcoholic beverage at that time. It was food. And what I could find out when I had a look into the documents I was talking about from that city in close to Düsseldorf, which is today called Neuss, and in the old days it was called Novesia. They had in the year 1400 41 breweries, and these 41 breweries were producing more than 2 million liters of beer, mainly Grut beer, and in most cases a very, very thin beer with a low percentage of alcohol. And what scientists calculated is that everybody, so that was a city with a population of 4,000, and everybody drank around 270 liters beer per year for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner. And what you can see here is a kind of porridge which was made with beer, and that was a typical breakfast in the morning. So the other purpose of Grut beer was it was used as a medicine, so it was good for health. And there were, as you can read here from my slide, it was said that it helped against many diseases like fever, diarrhea, and stuff like this. And in the year 1400, in this city, Neuss, there was a hospital which was in a monastery, and people who needed to go to that hospital and stay at that hospital, they were given 1.5 liter beer per day in these huge bottles here, which was not only nutrition, it was medicine as well. The other purpose was just a religious purpose. So Steve mentioned already that obviously Grut, the herbs have many different effects. So one effect is depending on the herbs you can use, it has psychedelic effects. And the old priests in the old days, they were using Grut beer to get in the state of trance and get in touch with the old gods. What I learned is that even the old gods themselves were drinking Grut beer, because in Asgard, I found out that there was a brewer who brewed beer and provided the Asian gods like Odin and Thor and you name them with Grut beer. And one more purpose was, depending on the herbs that have been used, it helped to avoid the feeling of fear or pain. So Germanic and Viking warriors used that beer before they went into a battle. And because of that, Grut beer, or at least the effect of Grut beer, found its way into the English language. You all know the term going berserk or berserker. And berserkers were like Viking warriors who were fighting in the first line, the ones who were leaving the ships first. And they all drank beer to keep away the pain and keep away the fear. And this is where the term going berserk is coming from, fighting like hell, fighting like a berserker, simply because they were under drugs.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Before we, so I guess I didn't realize flatulence was a disease. Who is that to? Who is Grut beer to protect? The person creating the flatulence, or the people enjoying the flatulence from, you know? And I know we're keeping it clean in front, but I didn't realize flatulence was a disease. I guess that's my point.
You can check that. If it has a number in the International Code of Diseases, it is a disease. If not, it isn't.
It's only when it's chronic.
Yeah. All right.
My wife would tell you it's a disease.
Here in the U.S., we have the CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control, and then we have the CFC.
Which is what? Okay. Okay. All right. I got it.
So
All right.
yeah, I think, you know, if we were to, I think this is important. This is a breakthrough here. I think we probably need to be marketing, you know, Mabel's Grut.
Why not?
It sometimes gets pretty loud in that theater, Jeff. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
All right. Okay, so one more thing I could find out. Many of you may have heard about the German purity law, which says that, which is from the year 1516. I was talking about that last week already, which says that beer should only be brewed with some specific ingredients like hops, like yeast, like water, like malt, and all that stuff. I mentioned already that brewers had to go to a Grut master to get the right herbs and use the right herbs, because if somebody uses wrong herbs, it could have different effects which might have been wanted or not. But in many cities, Grut beer have been forbidden in the past because of the unwanted effects, like psychedelic effects, or people got poisoned and died because of drinking beer because brewers were using the wrong herbs. And in the city of Cologne, for example, this beer was called Doll beer, and Doll in the old German language means going mad, and it has been forbidden as well. And so that shines an entirely new light on the German purity law. So there are scientists who say that that is not a quality standard to keep the quality of beer stable, but one of the first European anti-drug laws, just to for the purpose of getting rid of these doll beer, or these beer made by herbs, which all the unwanted effects herb beer could have. So in order just to make sure that you are keeping your fingers away from certain kind of herbs. I highlighted these herbs which you should not use because they can have psychedelics effects or just work like drugs. So if you want to learn more about that, you can check that on hopfenhelden.de, and everything is written in English there as well.
Question.
Yeah.
So now they've shifted those drugs over to kilopitch, right? Those herbs.
I would say so, yes. But
Yes.
kilopitch, as you know, is medicine as well.
Yes. So just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
So that's actually an interesting point, Mary Lou, and I was thinking the same thing. Is does the history of the Jägermeister, the Kilopitch, those herbed liqueurs tie in any way back to this Dole beer? Was it maybe somehow a way to get around that? Is there any relation, Dieter? Did you come up with any connections there?
I have honestly no idea. So what I know that in Düsseldorf, for example, there were not only many breweries, there were many distilleries as well, and most of the breweries 150 years ago were producing liquor as well. But I have no idea if that has something to do with Grut Beer or it's just another brand and another drink. I don't know. So that was what I could find out about Grut Beer and the history of Grut Beer. And as I said last week already, I'm a beer drinker, not a beer brewer. So if you want to understand how this beer is brewed, somebody else need to step in. I don't know.